The desperate call the Zenthari Empire's last hope ambassador, Liara Keth, stood before the massive curved windows of the Galactic Assembly Station, watching the stars that had once seemed so peaceful. Her silver skin, marked with the traditional blue spirals of her people, caught the artificial light as she pressed her palm against the cool metal surface. Behind her, the great assembly hall buzzed with hundreds of different languages being translated in real time. The Zenthari had been members of the Galactic Assembly for over 3,000 years. They were known throughout the galaxy as master traders, brilliant engineers, and peaceful negotiators. Their empire spanned 47 star systems, each one a hub of commerce and culture. Or at least, that's what it had been before the void. Swarm arrived. Liara's luminous purple eyes reflected the pain of watching her civilization crumble. In just 6 months, the swarm had consumed 12 Zenthari worlds. Not conquered, not occupied. Consumed. The planets themselves were stripped bare, their atmospheres harvested, their populations simply vanishing without a trace. No one knew where the swarm came from or what they wanted. They appeared at the edge of a system, their massive bioships, dark against the void, and within weeks entire worlds were gone. The assembly hall gradually quieted as High Counselor Vrex took the central podium. The Vrex were an ancient species, their crystalline bodies towering 9 feet tall, and they had led the assembly for millennia. Vrex's voice resonated through the translation systems with the weight of absolute authority. "The session will come to order," Vrex announced. "Ambassador Liara of the Zenthari Empire has requested an emergency session to address what she terms an existential threat to galactic civilization." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Many species had their own problems, their own territorial disputes and resource conflicts. The Zenthari situation was tragic, but hardly the first time a member species had faced extinction. Liara walked to the speaker's platform, her legs trembling slightly. She had practiced this speech for days, knowing it might be her people's last chance for survival. The holographic displays around the hall showed the current state of Zenthari space. 12 systems marked in red, consumed by the swarm. 23 systems marked in yellow under immediate threat, and 12 systems marked in green, representing the last refuge of her people. "Honored delegates," Liara began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "The Zenthari Empire faces complete annihilation. The entity we call the Void Swarm has already consumed 42 billion of our people. Their bioships are unlike anything in our databases. They don't use technology as we understand it. They are technology." She activated the holographic display, showing recordings from the last defense of Zenthari colony world Kavaris. The footage was haunting. Massive organic ships that seemed to be alive, stretching for kilometers through space. They moved like living creatures, pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that hurt to look at directly. When they reached the planet, they didn't land or attack in any conventional sense. Instead, they seemed to digest the entire world from orbit, stripping away the atmosphere and surface materials in spiraling patterns. "Our most advanced warships cannot penetrate their bio-armor," Liara continued. "Energy weapons are absorbed and converted to strengthen their hulls. Kinetic weapons simply bounce off their adaptive plating. We have tried everything in our arsenal, and nothing works. They learn from every attack, becoming stronger and more resistant." Counselor Vrex leaned forward, his crystalline features reflecting the holographic light. "What exactly are you requesting, Ambassador? The Assembly cannot commit to a military campaign against an unknown enemy. We need the combined fleets of the Assembly," Liara replied desperately. "The swarm is not just a threat to the Zenthari. Intelligence suggests they're moving toward the core systems. If they consume our remaining worlds, they'll have the resources to threaten everyone." The debate that followed was heated but predictable. The Thaxan delegation argued that their own border conflicts required all available military resources. The Kepler Consortium claimed their trade routes were more strategically important than defending Zenthari worlds. The Crystalline Hierarchy, led by Vrex himself, maintained that the Assembly's role was diplomatic, not military. Hours passed. Liara presented evidence, tactical analyses, and desperate pleas for aid. But one by one, the member species found reasons to avoid involvement. Some offered token humanitarian aid, others promised to accept Xanthari refugees, but none would commit warships to actually fight the swarm. Finally, Vrex called for a formal vote. All in favor of authorizing Assembly military intervention in the Xanthari crisis. The hall filled with the soft chimes of the voting system. When the count appeared on the displays, Liara felt her heart sink. 47 species had voted against intervention. Only 12 had voted in favor, and most of those were small, powerless civilizations with no significant military forces. The motion fails, Vrex announced with what might have been satisfaction. The Assembly will provide humanitarian aid and refugee resettlement assistance, but we cannot commit to military action against an unknown enemy. Liara stood alone at the podium as delegates began filing out of the hall. 3,000 years of alliance of trade partnerships and cultural exchange meant nothing when survival was at stake. The Xanthari were on their own. The last resort, 3 days later, Liara sat in her small diplomatic quarters aboard the assembly station, staring at a datapad containing the most recent intelligence reports. The swarm had taken 2 more Xanthari worlds while she had been pleading for help. At their current rate of consumption, her entire species would be extinct within 4 months. There was one file on her pad that she had avoided opening. A report on the newest members of the Galactic Assembly. Most new species were primitive, civilizations that had recently achieved faster-than-light travel. They were granted limited membership as a way to introduce them to galactic society gradually. Usually, they had little to offer beyond exotic cultural artifacts and primitive art, but there was one species that had puzzled the Assembly xenobiologists. Humans. Liara activated the file and began reading. Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world, with gravity nearly 3 times galactic standard, an atmosphere containing 21% oxygen, and a surface scarred by constant tectonic activity. Most species would require extensive life support just to visit such a world. Somehow humans had not only survived there but thrived. Their evolutionary history was disturbing by galactic standards. They had evolved from pack hunters, persistence predators who chased prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Their planet's history was filled with mass extinction events, ice ages, and catastrophic climate changes. They had survived by becoming the most adaptable species ever discovered. Even more interesting was their rapid technological development. In less than 200 years since developing powered flight, they had achieved nuclear fusion, artificial intelligence, and faster-than-light travel. Their expansion into space had been aggressive and methodical, establishing colonies on worlds that other species considered uninhabitable. But what caught Liara's attention was a single line in the cultural analysis. Humans demonstrate unusual willingness to risk individual survival for group benefit. Historical records indicate frequent examples of humans sacrificing themselves to protect others, even strangers. It was a desperate hope, but it was the only hope she had left. First contact, the human embassy on Assembly Station was smaller than most, reflecting their recent addition to galactic society. Liara found herself standing outside the simple metal door, gathering courage for what might be her people's final diplomatic attempt. Dr. James Chen answered her request for an emergency meeting within minutes. He was a tall human with graying hair and kind eyes behind old-fashioned corrective lenses. As Earth's chief xenobiologist and first contact specialist, he had been studying the various species in the Assembly with obvious enthusiasm. "Ambassador, Liara," he said, gesturing her into the modest office. "Please sit down. I've been following the reports about your situation. I'm very sorry for what your people are facing." Liara was surprised by the genuine sympathy in his voice. Most diplomats offered condolences as a formality, but Dr. Chen seemed to actually care about the fate of people he had never met. "Doctor, I need to ask something of humanity that I have no right to ask," she began. "My people are facing extinction, and the Assembly has refused to help. You've been in space for such a short time, and we've never had the chance to establish trade relations or cultural exchanges, but I'm asking anyway because we have nowhere else to turn." Dr. Chen leaned forward, his expression serious. Tell me what you need. Liara activated her portable display, showing him the same footage she had presented to the assembly. She explained the swarm's biotechnology, their adaptive defenses, and their systematic consumption of entire worlds. She showed him the tactical analyses proving that conventional weapons were useless against them. The assembly species have been spacefaring for thousands of years, she concluded. Their technology is far more advanced than anything on Earth. If they can't stop the swarm, I don't know what humanity could possibly do, but I had to ask. Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment, studying the tactical displays with obvious intelligence. Finally, he looked up at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Ambassador, you said the assembly species have advanced technology, but have they ever faced an enemy that adapts to their weapons? I don't understand. Earth's history is different from most worlds, Dr. Chen explained. We've been fighting adaptive enemies for millions of years. Bacteria that develop resistance to our medicines, predators that learn to counter our hunting strategies, other humans who adapt to our military tactics. We've survived by becoming better at adaptation than anything else. He activated his own display, showing images of Earth's surface. Liara gasped at the hostile landscape. Massive storm systems, active volcanoes, and terrain that looked like a nightmare version of paradise. Every human military strategy is based on facing an enemy that learns from our attacks. We call it asymmetric warfare. We don't rely on superior technology to win battles. We rely on superior adaptation. But your ships, Liara protested. The assembly records show that Earth has maybe 50 vessels total. The swarm has thousands of bioships. Dr. Chen smiled. And there was something predatory in that expression that reminded Liara that humans were evolved predators. Ambassador, let me contact our military command. I think you might be surprised by what humanity can offer. The Death World. Fleet Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the ECS Indomitable, watching the stars streak past as the human fleet traveled toward Zenthari space. She was a compact woman with short black hair and scars on her hands from years of military service. Behind her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, their movements precise and economical. The fleet accompanying the Indomitable was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. 27 ships that looked crude and primitive compared to the elegant vessels of the assembly species. They were thick, blocky, and covered in armor plating that seemed excessive for space travel. To alien eyes, they probably looked like flying fortresses rather than starships, which was exactly what they were. Admiral Sarah Morrison's voice crackled through the communication system from the flagship. All ships, we're approaching the Zenthari border. Remember, we're here to assess the situation and provide aid if possible. Intelligence suggests we're facing an enemy unlike anything in our experience. Elena almost smiled at that. Humans had been facing enemies unlike anything in their experience for their entire evolutionary history. It was what they did best. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Zenthari system, and Elena felt her jaw tighten at what the sensors showed. The system was a wasteland. 3 planets that should have been thriving worlds were reduced to bare rock, their atmospheres stripped away. Massive bioships moved through the system like living clouds, their organic hulls pulsing with alien life. Captain, Lieutenant Rodriguez called from the sensor station. I'm reading 43 large bioships and hundreds of smaller ones. They're unlike anything in our databases. Elena studied the tactical display. The bioships were enormous, some stretching over 5 kilometers in length. They moved with fluid grace, more like swimming creatures than spacecraft, but what caught her attention was their behavior pattern. They were systematic, methodical, stripping resources from the system with mechanical efficiency. Interesting, she murmured. They're not trying to intimidate or terrorize, they're just harvesting like a swarm of locusts. A new contact appeared on the edge of the system, a small Zenthari diplomatic vessel, broadcasting frantically on all frequencies. Elena recognized the voice of Ambassador Liara from the recordings Dr. Chen had shared. Human fleet. This is Ambassador Liara. Please, you must leave immediately. The swarm will consume your ships. We've lost everything trying to fight them. Elena opened a communication channel. "Ambassador, this is Captain Vasquez of the Earth. Colonial Marines, we're here to help." "Captain, you don't understand. These creatures adapt to every weapon we use against them. Your ships will only feed their growth." Elena looked at her tactical officer, Commander Sarah Kim, who had been studying the bioship movements. Kim was a third-generation military officer whose family had been fighting pirates and hostile aliens since humanity's first expansion into space. "Captain," Kim said quietly, "they're moving in predictable patterns, perfect formation flying, coordinated harvesting operations. They're operating like a single organism." A hive mind, Elena realized. They adapt collectively, but they think collectively too. That might be their weakness. She opened a fleet-wide channel. "All ships, Battle Formation Delta. We're going to test their adaptive capabilities." The human fleet spread out into a complex three-dimensional formation that would have looked chaotic to most galactic military observers. Each ship took a different vector, approaching the bioships from multiple angles simultaneously. "Remember," Elena broadcast to the fleet, "we're not trying to win this engagement. We're trying to learn how they adapt. Every ship uses different weapons, different tactics. Make them show us how they think." The first exchange began when the bioships detected the approaching human fleet. The massive organic vessels turned toward them with surprising speed, their surfaces rippling with new growths that looked suspiciously like weapon emplacements. Elena watched the tactical display as the bioships opened fire with energy weapons that seemed to grow from their hulls in real time. The beams struck the leading human ships and were absorbed by their heavy armor plating without causing significant damage. "Interesting," Commander Kim observed. "They're using the same energy frequencies that worked against Xanthari ships. They haven't adapted to our armor composition yet." The human response was immediate and varied. Each ship fired different weapons: kinetic rounds, plasma bursts, nuclear missiles, even experimental particle beams. The bioships reacted to each attack differently, their hulls shifting and changing to counter the incoming fire. But Elena noticed something crucial. They were adapting to each weapon individually, but they weren't coordinating their adaptations across the entire swarm. Ship Alpha's adaptation to kinetic rounds didn't transfer to Ship Beta when it faced the same weapons. Their hive mind has a processing limit, she realized. They can't adapt to everything simultaneously. That was when Elena Vasquez smiled, and it was the smile of a predator who had just found her prey's weakness. The human fleet was about to show the galaxy what Deathworlders could do when they stopped playing defense. The Deathworld response the swarm meets. Its match, the bioships of the Void Swarm, had consumed 47 civilizations across 3 galactic sectors. Each time the pattern was the same: initial resistance, followed by rapid adaptation, then complete consumption of all resources. The swarm's collective consciousness had cataloged thousands of different weapon types, defensive strategies, and military formations. They had evolved countermeasures for every known form of galactic warfare. But as the human fleet began its attack, something unprecedented happened. The swarm's hive mind encountered chaos. Captain Elena Vasquez watched her tactical display as 27 human ships executed what any military academy would have called complete tactical insanity. No 2 ships followed the same attack vector. No 2 ships used the same weapons. Some ships attacked in pairs, others alone. Some focused on the largest bioships, others targeted the smallest. There was no apparent pattern, no coordinated strategy that the swarm's collective intelligence could analyze and counter. The Indomitable dove toward the largest bioship, firing a sustained barrage of kinetic rounds from its magnetic accelerators. The bioship's hull began adapting, growing thicker, armor plating to deflect the metal slugs. But before the adaptation could complete, Elena ordered a sudden course change, and the ship began firing plasma bursts at a completely different target. Meanwhile, the ECS Defiant was attacking the same bioship with nuclear missiles, forcing its hull to develop radiation shielding. The ECS Relentless hit it with particle beams, requiring electromagnetic defenses. All 3 adaptations were happening simultaneously, and the bioship's processing power was being stretched to its limits. "Commander Kim," Elena called to her tactical officer, "are you seeing what I'm seeing?" Sarah Kim studied the bioship's adaptive responses, her eyes wide with understanding. "They're overloading, Captain. Each ship is adapting individually, but they can't share adaptation data fast enough to keep up with our rate of change." Elena nodded grimly. This was exactly what she had hoped for. Humans had been fighting adaptive enemies for millions of years, and they had learned the crucial lesson. If your enemy adapts to your tactics, never use the same tactics twice. The human fleet began implementing what Elena privately called evolution warfare. Every 30 seconds, each ship changed weapons, changed targets, changed attack patterns. The moment a bioship began adapting to kinetic rounds, it was hit with plasma. When it adapted to plasma, it faced nuclear missiles. When it adapted to missiles, it was attacked with particle beams. But the real breakthrough came when Elena noticed something the swarm's hive mind had missed. The bioships were so focused on adapting to weapons that they had stopped coordinating their movements. "All ships," Elena broadcast. "Pattern Delta 7. Time to show them how pack hunters really work." The art of impossible warfare, the human fleet suddenly shifted into a formation that would have terrified any Earth predator. The EA coordinated pack hunt. Elena had studied the tactical files of humanity's greatest military victories, from ancient battles on Earth to recent conflicts with pirates in the outer colonies. The pattern was always the same. When facing a superior enemy, humans didn't try to match their strength. They isolated them, confused them, and attacked their weaknesses. The ECS Indomitable and 5 other ships formed the drive team, moving in aggressive attack runs that forced the bioships to cluster together for mutual protection. Meanwhile, the ECS Defiant led the ambush team, positioning themselves in the bioships' blind spots. The remaining ships formed harassment teams, making constant hit-and-run attacks that kept the swarm's attention divided. Ambassador Liara watched the battle from her small diplomatic vessel, her luminous eyes wide with disbelief. The human ships were tiny compared to the massive bioships, but they moved with a coordination that seemed almost telepathic. Every maneuver served multiple purposes. Every attack created opportunities for other ships. "How are they doing this?" she whispered to her aide. "The swarm has never faced such tactics." On the bridge of the Indomitable, Elena was coordinating the battle through a combination of real-time communication and pre-planned contingencies. Unlike the swarm's hive mind, the human fleet didn't share a single consciousness. Instead, they shared something more dangerous, a common understanding of how to fight impossible odds. "Defiant, you have 3 bioships converging on your position," Elena called over the communication system. "Copy that, Indomitable," came the response from Captain Torres. "Executing Crazy Ivan maneuver. Relentless, I'm going to need cover fire in 15 seconds. Relentless here, Torres. We see you. Going to full burn." Elena smiled as she watched the tactical display. The Crazy Ivan was a maneuver developed during the Pirate Wars where a ship would suddenly reverse course and accelerate directly toward you, pursuing enemies. Most species considered it suicidal insanity. Humans called it Tuesday. The ECS Defiant spun on its axis and accelerated directly toward the 3 bioships that had been chasing it. The swarm's hive mind couldn't comprehend the tactical logic because there wasn't any. It was pure human stubbornness. If you can't run away from a superior enemy, run toward them and make them regret chasing you. The bioships were forced to scatter to avoid collision, breaking their formation and exposing their flanks to the ECS, Relentless, which hit them with a coordinated barrage of every weapon type simultaneously. The swarm's adaptation protocols completely overloaded trying to counter 12 different attack types at once. But the real surprise came when the bioships tried to regroup. They moved back into their standard formation, expecting the human ships to follow conventional tactics. Instead, Elena ordered something that made even her own crew question her sanity. "All ships, ramming speed, target the largest bioship. We're going to see how well they adapt to kinetic impact." The Death World, Doctrine what happened next would be talked about in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. 27 human ships, each massing between 200,000 and 800,000 tons, accelerated to maximum velocity and aimed directly at the swarm's largest bioship. The bioship's hive mind calculated the kinetic energy of the approaching impact and began growing additional armor plating. But Elena had anticipated this. At the last possible moment, all 27 ships fired their engines in reverse, bleeding off just enough velocity to avoid actual collision while maximizing the psychological impact. The bioship's sensors registered 27 massive objects, approaching at ramming speed, followed by 27 objects suddenly decelerating. The swarm's collective consciousness experienced something it had never encountered before: confusion. Humans, Elena realized with savage satisfaction, were apparently the only species in the galaxy crazy enough to threaten mutual annihilation. As a tactical gambit, "All ships scatter pattern," she ordered. "Hit them with everything we've got while they're trying to figure out what just happened." The human fleet spread out in all directions, each ship following a completely random flight path while maintaining constant fire on the bioships. The swarm tried to adapt, but their hive mind was designed for logical, predictable enemies. Humans fighting for their lives were neither logical nor predictable. Commander Kim watched the tactical display with professional admiration. "Captain, they're losing coordination. Look at the movement patterns." Elena studied the data and nodded. The bioships were starting to act independently, their hive mind fracturing under the strain of processing completely unpredictable human tactics. Some ships were trying to adapt to kinetic weapons, others to energy weapons, but they were no longer sharing information effectively. "Now we show them why Earth is a Class 12 death world," Elena said quietly. She opened a fleet-wide channel. "All ships implement Protocol 7, maximum aggression, minimum self-preservation. Let's remind them why humans are the apex predators of the galaxy." The swarm's retreat, what followed, was not a battle in any conventional sense. It was a demonstration of why humanity had survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, and countless other extinction events. When faced with impossible odds, humans didn't surrender. They got angry. The human fleet abandoned all pretense of self-preservation and launched into the most aggressive assault in recorded galactic history. Ships that were damaged didn't retreat for repairs. They used their damage as weapons, ramming bioships with their broken hulls. Ships that ran out of ammunition didn't withdraw. They used their engines as weapons, burning bioships with superheated plasma exhaust. The ECS Relentless, its hull breached in 3 places and its main engines offline, managed to park itself inside the cavity of a massive bioship and detonate its nuclear reactor. The resulting explosion took out 5 bioships and demonstrated to the swarm that humans were willing to die to achieve victory. For the first time in its existence across multiple galaxies, the Void Swarm experienced fear. The bioships began to retreat, their collective consciousness overwhelmed by the sheer unpredictability of human warfare. They had encountered thousands of species, adapted to millions of weapons, but they had never faced an enemy that treated certain death as an acceptable tactical option. Elena watched the bioships fleeing the system and felt a moment of savage satisfaction, but she also felt exhaustion. The human fleet had lost 7 ships and over 2,000 crew members. By any reasonable standard, it was a Pyrrhic victory at best. But it was a victory. "All ships, stand down from combat alert," she ordered. "Begin search and rescue operations for survivors." Ambassador Liara's voice came over the communication system, filled with awe and disbelief. "Captain Vasquez, how is this possible? The swarm has never retreated from any engagement." Elena looked at the tactical display showing the fleeing bioships and shrugged. "Ambassador, they've never fought humans before. We're not like other species. We don't fight to win battles, we fight to survive. And humans are very, very good at surviving." The galaxy takes notice. News of the human victory spread through the Galactic Assembly, faster than light-speed communication. For the first time in recorded history, the Void Swarm had been defeated. Not just fought to a standstill, not just delayed, but actually forced to retreat from a system they had intended to consume. High Counselor Vrex received the initial reports with disbelief, then growing concern. The crystalline leader had dismissed humanity as primitive newcomers, barely worthy of limited assembly membership. Now they were being hailed as the galaxy's saviors. Dr. James Chen found himself inundated with requests for meetings from species that had barely acknowledged humanity's existence just days before. The Thaxan Confederation wanted to discuss military alliance. The Kepler Consortium offered exclusive trade agreements. Even the proud crystalline hierarchy requested formal diplomatic discussions. But Elena Vasquez, now promoted to admiral after her tactical brilliance, had other priorities. She stood on the bridge of the rebuilt Indomitable, watching as human engineering crews worked alongside Xanthari refugees to establish new colonies on the worlds the swarm had abandoned. "Admiral," Commander Kim reported, "we're receiving requests from 17 different species asking for military assistance against various threats. Apparently, word is spreading that humans are willing to fight impossible battles." Elena almost smiled. "Tell them we'll consider each request individually, but make it clear that humanity doesn't fight for glory or conquest. We fight to protect people who can't protect themselves." Ambassador Liara approached the admiral, her silver skin now marked with the traditional Xanthari symbols of eternal gratitude. "Admiral Vasquez, my people owe you a debt that can never be repaid. But I must ask, why did you risk everything for a species you had never met?" Elena looked out at the stars, thinking of the crew members who had died in the battle, the ships that had been destroyed, the price of victory. "Ambassador, there's something you need to understand about humans. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. We learned that the only way to survive is to make sure everyone survives. When we heard that the swarm was consuming entire civilizations, we couldn't just stand by and watch." She turned to face Liara, and the Xanthari ambassador saw something in her eyes that explained everything. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their weapons or their tactics or their willingness to sacrifice. It was their absolute refusal to abandon others to fate. Besides, Elena added with a slight smile, the galaxy is a lot more interesting with diversity. It would be boring if there was only one species left. As the human fleet continued its patrol of the former swarm territory, something fundamental had changed in galactic politics. Humanity was no longer seen as primitive newcomers from a backwater world. They were the species that had stared into the void and made it blink first. The galaxy had asked for human aid, expecting perhaps a few transport ships and medical supplies. Instead, they had received something far more valuable, proof that even the most impossible odds could be overcome with enough determination, creativity, and the willingness to risk everything for others. The Death Worlders had arrived, and the EI Suts galaxy would never be the same.